everybody, and welcome back to the Finding Wendy Podcast. I just wanted to start off today with a very special note. So, I have been doing some research, and I want to make my podcast more organically discoverable on all of the different podcast platforms. So through some research and looking for the best way to do this, I have decided to change the name of my Finding Wendy podcast to Wellness and Willpower. So say hello to Wellness and Willpower, overcoming cravings, chaos, and coping with strength. Real talk on addiction, mental health, and long-term weight management. So why the change? As I mentioned, I want to help more people find this show. So organic discoverability, choosing a name that clearly reflects, I can't talk, with this podcast and what it's all about. So why are we here today? Well, I am very, very pleased to introduce a very special friend. So today I'll be speaking with Chad Tailor. So just a bit about Chad. Chad is a Toronto-based filmmaker, screenwriter, and educator at the Toronto Film School. His work draws deeply from his lived experiences and explores themes of identity, addiction, resilience, and redemption. He's known for telling bold, emotional, charged, and socially relevant stories that shine a light on subjects many shy away from, like grief, family trauma, coming out, and recovery. His short films include A Done Deal, which he garnered over 100,000 views on YouTube. Congratulations, Chad. That's amazing. Forgiveness in F minor, a queer short about healing and reconnection. Finesse, a witty mystery comedy. And Memento Mori, a powerful drama centered around Canada's MAID program, which is the program for, what's the MAID, the acronym for, Chad, again?
Medical Assistance in Death.
Yes, Medical Assistance in Death program, which was recently nominated for the Writers Guild of Canada Screenwriting Award and won Best Short Film at the Toronto Independent Film Festival. Congratulations. Chad is also a passionate mentor, now teaching at the very school that helped turn his life around. He continues to inspire the next generation of filmmakers while creating meaningful, impactful films on his own. From rock bottom to real, REEL, from rock bottom to real stories that resonate. So today we're diving into Chad's incredible journey. So grab a coffee, get comfy. I got my coffee. Let's get in it, Chad. And thank you so much, Chad, for coming today.
Thank you for having me, Wendy.
Yes, it's great. And we'll just right off the bat, you can learn more at www.tailoredfilms.ca/filmography. So we'll talk more about that. We'll have the link in the podcast notes as well. So let's kick off with your film, A Done Deal. Over 100,000 views on YouTube. That's huge. So take us back to 2013. What was going on in your life that inspired that film?
Well, where to start? The film A Done Deal is it's based off of my true story of addiction and recovery. And in 2013, I was in film school at Toronto Film School, and I had the opportunity to make a thesis film. And I always thought that my story was something that I wanted to bring to light, to also like help people see somebody going through it and somebody who has recovered, and also as a bit of therapy for me, to kind of explore those narratives from a sober perspective.
Right, right. So if you want to just share some insight about the DIY process, writing, directing, producing, editing.
Yeah, I was the producer, director, writer, editor, location manager, production designer, all of that. I was in my sixth term at Toronto Film School, and it started out as just a scene and slowly evolved into basically my whole story, or one chapter of my whole story, when I was starting to hit rock bottom, being addicted to methamphetamine.
Yeah.
The writing process was was really based off of true encounters that I had with friends. The names were changed and so on, and some things were exaggerated, a little dramatized for film. But I really stayed true to what got me leading down to my rock bottom.
Yeah.
That's where I started with the writing. And then the producing, I thought, where am I going to film this? What locations am I going to find? And I thought no better place than to go back to my hometown where I lived through this chapter of my life. And
And what's the
also,
name of this hometown?
my hometown is called Hairston, Ontario.
Harriston, Ontario. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Where is that
Southwestern.
in relation to Toronto?
It's around 2 hours northwest. It's just north of Kitchener-Waterloo, Wellington County, farmlands, and such. And so that's where I grew up, and it's it was it's a very nice town. It just there wasn't a lot to do,
Right.
and we found the boredom
Yeah.
really got to us, and that's what kind of started the drug use.
Yeah, so that when I watched the film, I guess you call it sort of a biopic as well. So it was a very shocking film for me, knowing that it's based on your life story, but the ending is not your life story of the film because I'm not gonna. I'm well. We can leave the cat out of the bag if we want about the
Yeah,
ending,
we can,
but
we can
what?
we can spoil it. Yes,
We can
spoiler
spoil it.
alert.
So,
Spoiler alert.
spoiler alert, at the end you die. Well, obviously you're living, breathing, and you're not dead, and you've moved
Right.
on. But if you were to remake this film today, what would you change, if anything?
If I could remake it today, I would make it longer, and I would also show the before leading up to that, and as well as the after. Now, the ending would not obviously be the same. That part was dramatized for film, but I felt like I wrote that in there that my character does die because I came very close to dying.
Right.
If I hadn't if I there yeah if I hadn't made one turn, I might not be standing here today.
Yeah.
So
And obviously you made it over 10 years ago, so your filming technique and your whole process of creating film has changed and improved vastly over the years as far as the actual technical part of making a film. So let's just jump right into your personal story. So you spoke and you speak candidly about addiction, and you started with weed and you progressed to meth and cocaine. And so take us through this whole process. How old were you? How did this unravel? And what sort of things happened while you were there in this small little town in what's it called? Central Ontario?
yeah,
Central South Ontario? Southwest Ontario?
Southwestern
Yeah,
Ontario.
so the feeling of being lost, isolated, and really searching for your identity as a queer person.
Yeah, it really the drug use really started out just by not knowing myself, not knowing who I am at the moment, and wanting to fit in with other people. That was one of the main causes of
And
it.
how old were you when you started using drugs?
I was around 18 or 19 when we
Yeah.
started, and it was just a typical, the drugs are at a party that you're at with your friends, and you do them, and then it goes on. It became like a weekend habit, which then slowly started consuming me and consuming my life and consuming my train of thought. So that was all I was really focused on after a while.
And then you got into actually dealing and selling drugs as well.
Yeah, at one point it just became more economical for me to be dealing to support my habit because I couldn't keep a job, after so much use. I was no use in the workplace, and I didn't want to be around people or have that responsibility. So I
Yeah.
was offered
And what
like a
about your
job.
parents? What about your parents through all this? How did they see you were changing? Did they know you were doing this?
Yes, my parents saw me. I was living at their house for a little while, until it just became too much for them to see, because they would try to talk to me, and try to help me find my path at that point. But I didn't know who I was yet, and I wasn't
Yeah.
comfortable. I was still closeted at that point, and wasn't comfortable coming out until maybe the fourth or fifth year of using, is when I decided to go into my first treatment program. And in that treatment program, part of the therapy was, you know, realizing why you were doing that in the first place. And I realized, I was covering up my true identity, and that was the first thing that I needed to do in order to heal.
Yeah, yeah. And the interesting thing about this other film that is doing so well and is winning lots and lots of awards, Forgiveness in F minor, basically about a young boy who is also queer but was kicked out by his father. But in your case, the stress, the tension, the fear, it didn't come because there was issues with your own parents. It was more you couldn't identify with being queer in that community. You felt very isolated, didn't have any friends you could relate to.
That's exactly right. And there was no examples of what a gay person was, right? And anything was, there was lots of slurs being thrown around by the people, and it was talked down upon. So there's me not having any example until I got to the city, and got to see some queer people just being, and having that sort of example, and then having the confidence to come out to my parents. That was it.
Yeah. Well, it really hits home. I've had my own struggles too. Addiction, food addiction, alcohol addiction, drug addiction is brought on by some kind of stress, and usually starts when you're young, in your teens, where you're searching for your own identity and who are you? I was a musician, and I desperately wanted to be a musician, but I had some struggles to get to that as well. So at one point in the film, the police were involved, and there was something that went down really, really bad. What happened with you? What you actually were arrested?
The real story.
The real story.
Yeah, the real story. Well, where it in the film, where it shifts is when the gun goes off, and I'll tell
Yes.
a little
And
bit about that as well. So as I was dealing, um, um, some people owed me money, and some friends said they would help me with that. Um, and Well, needless to say, so a weapon ended up in my apartment building, a shotgun, and it went off in my apartment building before we left, to go get that money. And that's what triggered the police to come and look for me at the
so
apartment.
somebody reported or called the police that they heard a gunshot?
Yeah, I was living in an apartment complex, and the gun went off in the stairwell.
Oh
And
God.
other residents called the police. I left town for a few days to hide out and calm down. And when I came back, the police were looking for me. I went in voluntarily, and confessed to what happened.
Oh, wow. Isn't that something? You must have been scared out of your mind, scared shitless.
So scared. It was at the moment that the gun went off where I realized my whole life just changed,
Yep.
and it was too late to do anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so taking those 4 days to think about, what my best options were, and then come back and deal with it as best I could.
So you were actually brought to jail. You were in jail there.
I was in jail for 48 hours, and
Yeah.
my parents then came to court and bailed me out.
Right.
And it was about a year from that date that I finally had my first court date. where I was sentenced to house arrest. So I had a house arrest sentence for a year and a half.
Yeah, which
And
takes us to our next segment where you're talking about your house arrest and place under house arrest. So that was your serious wake up call. So you had these charges, and you had some explaining to do to your parents, like, what the hell? What's going on? Like, how was that interaction with your parents? Like, were they afraid? Were they scared? Were they mad? Were they just besides themselves?
no, my parents were afraid for my safety and my
Yeah,
health
yeah,
and everything, and they were very supportive throughout the process. They weren't mad at me, and at that point, I knew I needed to be honest with them that they were the only people really on my side, because all the people that I was surrounding myself with, they were nowhere to be found, and basically, not the types of friends that you think they are.
yeah. So then, so then, so just to get the timeline right, so you were arrested, you were charged, you were in jail for 48 hours. Your parents bailed you out, and then you were under house arrest. And so when you were in house arrest, was that when you started following a drug addiction program?
No, actually, I did the drug addiction program before the whole event started happening. What happened with the rehabilitation program was I ended up signing myself out after 30 days, and because I didn't feel that it was right for me, and it wasn't the right time for me, so I ended up relapsing, which then led to the events in my.
Oh, so it was a relapse. I
So
see.
it
Okay.
was my first attempt at getting clean, going
Right.
to a program. But again, if you're not ready to quit yourself and aren't ready to confront those things, well, I had only confronted one thing, just coming out as queer. That was the first step. The
Right.
second step was why else am I using? And I really found it was the environment that I was in that small town, being queer, not having an outlet for myself or my own creativity, and knowing that I didn't want to have to work on a farm, I didn't want to do construction, all that, and it was acting and filmmaking that was my passion, and I needed
Yeah.
to get out of the small town in order to do that.
Yeah. The terminology "finding your tribe." It's something that I have the book behind me that reminds me, Atomic Habits, which is a fantastic, fantastic book, and also talks about finding your tribe, and finding a purpose or a group of people, or just finding someone that has a similar interest to you and helps you grow as young teenagers and young people. That's the struggle for so many people, and they go off to post-secondary school and hopefully find it in university, and some people never find their tribe, or they don't know that they have a tribe, or just stumbled upon it accidentally. I stumbled upon the fact that I really love playing music accidentally, and so many creative people that I have come across and discovered. It was kind of a happenstance discoverability that oh, I really like doing this. This is fun. Wait a minute, I like to perform. Or wait a minute, I like to act. Or wait a minute, I like to direct films and make films and write stories. And so you had this wonderful support of an aunt who basically tell us a story about how she was really very, very important to get you to Toronto.
Yeah, my aunt, she was, that cool aunt that we all have that cool aunt or cool uncle that we look up to, that we can, we feel that we can,
I'm hopefully considered the cool aunt in my family. Yes,
right? I hope that as well with me, with my nieces now as well.
my nieces and nephews too. How many nieces and nephews do you have?
I have two nieces.
I have five.
And so I felt comfortable opening up to her. She was always like a wise lady that I always respected. And so she took me in at one point, and I lived with her for a couple months.
And
And
that was where? In what?
that was
In
in Brampton.
Brampton. You're
Yeah,
closer to Toronto.
I was closer to Toronto, but so, getting out of this small town really made me realize that, oh, okay, I can make it in the city. I have like a network here, a family. It was my aunts, my cousin, and their family.
And so how did you get from Brampton to the Toronto Film School, or going and getting interested in becoming? So what was the aha moment, the Oprah aha moment where you thought, I like this, I like acting, or I want to go to the Toronto Film School?
Yeah, it was a conversation with actually like my cousin, who was talking to me, like you need to find your path, right? Like you used to love being in theater, you used to love acting and love working. My father worked in the film industry as well, so
Okay.
that kind of inspired me to take that path. And it was in the ending phase of my sentence and at my probation that I knew I had to make a plan for myself in order to actually stay sober, to actually get out of the whole mess of addiction and everything like that. So I realized that, okay, what did you love doing? Acting was my number one. So I went online and I started applying to acting schools. And Toronto Film School was the one
Was
that
the one.
offered me an audition.
Yeah. And um so and how many years, or were you at the Toronto Film School as a student?
Almost the better part of 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
I was there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
it
were
was such
you already starting to produce films yourself, and were you acting in other films, or how did that work?
Yeah, right from the get-go, right in term one, I would join the acting program, obviously, but I always had a passion for storytelling. So I was making, small films with my film friends every weekend kind of thing and really exploring that. And I tell you, like that rush of doing, what you love,
Yep.
that feeling replaced all of the feelings that you would get from using.
Yeah, for sure. So let's move on to our next segment, where you're going to be talking about some of your latest films, like Finesse and Memento Mori. And these two are completely different in tone, but equally powerful. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Finesse first off?
Yeah, Finesse is a proof of concept short film about a university student named Mickey. Now, Mickey is a good person. She takes care of her younger brother. Her parents are very busy. This one day, when she's coming home from university, a classmate is stranded and she offers him a ride home, but she has to pick up her little brother first. And so the friend comes into the place and then they leave and drop off the little brother. When Mickey returns, she notices that her mother's prized porcelain egg is missing,
Oh,
and then it's kind of a who done it when Mickey and her cousin Danny, who I play, they try and figure out who did it.
and so this film you just mentioned your character. So you're in the film, directing the film. You're in front of the camera and behind the camera.
I was behind the camera as producer, and then I was in front of the camera as Danny, so as one of the supporting
So
actors.
it's a lot of responsibility. There are not too many. There are a few actors and actresses in Hollywood that do that sort of thing, where they're in front and behind the camera. I guess this new Apple show, what's it called, The Studio, with our Canadian actor from Vancouver. Um, uh, I went off script, and when I do that, I can't remember anybody's name. It just happens. He just
I'm very
he
bad
wrote a
with
book.
names.
It's called the Yearbook. Oh my God. Okay, it doesn't matter. Anyways, so then, and so, how long ago was this film, Finesse? Is it this recently?
Yeah, Finesse was filmed in October of last year in
Oh,
2020.
okay, so very recent, yeah.
Yeah,
And
that
so that, yeah, and this other film, Memento Mori, what's that about?
Memento Mori is about a terminally ill woman in her 50s who opts in for the MAID program, so medical assistance in dying. And so she's made the decision to end her life because she's in pain. And what we did is we focused, instead of focusing on the woman and the choice that she made, we focus on her friends and her family. And she basically gathers her friends and family for her final day to help her celebrate her life and help her pass. And it's about their reaction to her choice and how it affects others and how others need to process this big, huge decision that is not
Right.
theirs, it's out of their control.
Yeah, yeah. And so the other film I wanted to also touch on, Forgiveness in F minor. So how long ago did you make that film, and tell us all about the different awards that you have been winning regarding this film. What's the film about?
Forgiveness in F minor is about a young queer man in his 20s returning home for the first time in almost 10 years because he was kicked out when he came out as queer to his family. He came from a very conservative Christian family, and he gets news that his father has passed. And him and his father shared a very strong bond when he was younger, learning piano. His father was a piano teacher, and he was the student. And so it's about him coming home, not having that chance to have that talk with his father, and not having that chance to apologize or reconnect, and then trying to mend the bonds with his mother and his brother.
Yeah, it's a story that is sadly enough very common in the queer community, where there's a young person who basically gets kicked out by a parent of their house at a very young age, that they, through no fault of their own, but their parents don't accept that they're queer or trans. Of course, the series that we all watched with Billy Porter, Poise, where you have all of these people from the that community that basically were kicked out, and this whole series is about an older, let's say, drag queen who takes in a bunch of younger drag queen or potential drag queens, and they all live together in a common house. And it's just so tragic that something like that happens. It really hit home for me because, of course, the title of the film being the forgiveness in F minor. That's a great title because it's about a father who's a pianist and a son who's a pianist, but he's an artist like yourself as an artist, and thank goodness you were not kicked out. Thank goodness I wasn't kicked out either. But I mean, my whole queer journey is completely different. I didn't even come out till I was like 30. So it's really interesting. Now, I'd love to hear about all these awards that you're getting for these films, because that's really exciting. Like it's being recognized, your work, which is really, really wonderful.
Yeah, it's great, to have been accepted to so many film festivals. And like when the actual writer and director Doug Soroka, when he approached me with this film, we he was one of my former students, and he shined in his role, and I always wanted to work with him. And the story just spoke to me, even though I didn't, have an exact connection to that. I still felt that, right? And I was hoping audiences would feel the same, which we've won Best Drama Short at the Niagara International Film Festival. We've won Best of the Fest at the Queer Expressions Film Festival, Best Male Director. We've got nominated for Best Cinematography and Best Score. Because actually the director, Doug, he's also a pianist, and so he composed all of the theme music for the film as
Oh,
well.
neat. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a Forgiveness in F minor. And the Writers Guild of Canada, you won you won that for the which film?
Well, we've been nominated for a screenwriting award for Memento Mori. Uh,
Okay.
the award gala is on the 28th of April.
All
So
right.
just very nice to be recognized, by the Writers Guild, and to be able to be in the same room as some really high big players.
So take us through the process of where these stories come from. So if you're thinking like working on a project, do you work on one film at a time or many films at a time? And you like, is there a process where you're talking to someone and they tell you an interesting story and you're thinking, I could make a film about that. Just like I could interview you for one of my podcast episodes.
Yeah, there's always a bunch of creative ideas going around in my brain at a time. I don't know if there's ever been one time where I've only had one film on my plate. Maybe my first film, A Done Deal, was the only time. And then after that, um, I was mainly producing. So people would come and approach me about producing their films. And as a creative director, then I would, help them with script development and then finding all the resources we need, right? But I always look for stories that touch me, stories that I find a piece of myself in that I want
Okay.
to tell, whether that is a drama or a comedy or a horror film. I I love exploring all genres.
Yeah.
But what really matters to me is the meaning of the film and the team we have behind it as well.
And how does that work with funding for, it's great to have all these ideas and say, okay, I'm going to make a film about this, or I'm going to make a podcast about this or that. These things cost money. How do you do that? How do you put together, do you have investors? Do you go to someone and say, I want to make this film, it will cost $100,000 or $20,000?
Yeah, normally what I do is when a script lands on my desk, immediately start thinking, okay, what is the budget for this film? Where are we going to get the funds? There is lots of grants that you can apply for, and then also a lot of our personal funds that go into it as well, doing some crowdfunding, and that sort of thing to get the job done.
So when we skipped to sort of an important part about you, and that you've gone from the Toronto, being a student at Toronto Film School to an actual teacher at the Toronto Film School. So how did that process work? Because if you're talking to your students and you're saying, "Well, this is a great idea to have and put together a film. Let's work on the story. Let's work on the direction. Let's work on what we need." And then I'm going to show you how to write a grant, or how you're going to apply for money or get investors. Is that something that you also teach? So tell us about your role as a teacher at the Toronto Film School.
Yeah, so I teach the producing and directing class in the acting program, as well as the short film production class. And that's where we bring to life their original scripts that they have written. So we usually are shooting in studio. And then I'm also guiding them through their first time making their first films. So it's really what I did, what I do is what I'm teaching them to do as well. Because one thing that I love about Toronto Film School is the fact that with the acting program, they teach them how to be their own creators as well. And that's one big thing that I got from the Toronto Film School was that because as an actor, I mean, you have to sing for every audition to get the job and prove you're the best one.
Yeah.
I got the tools that I needed to make the material myself and then write the roles, for myself and make my own opportunities while I'm also auditioning for other projects too.
And that's a great way, and that's a great example, and I wish that they would do that more within the conservatories and music schools here in Toronto and around the world. Is that you're training all these musicians to eventually get a job with the symphony orchestra and audition here, there, and everywhere. But some people never win an audition because there's just so much competition. There's so much competition when you audition for a role as an actor, and waiting for that job, waiting for that salary. But if you approach it in an entrepreneur kind of way, that you're just going to make your own company, or make your own film, or make your own podcast, or create your own musical group and create your own concert series and write your own grants. That's a great way to actually teach students at the Toronto Film School, because that's the reality. it's when I talk about getting a job with a symphony orchestra, let's take the Toronto Symphony, for example. You audition for the Toronto Symphony, you get a job as a horn player in the Toronto Symphony. That horn section that's there will be there for 40 years. Most of the horn players, most of the wind and brass players stay there. They get the job in their 20s and they stay until they're 65. So this week, as a matter of fact, there's a coincidence. There's a principal trumpet audition happening at the Toronto Symphony. The last time there was a principal trumpet audition was 40 years ago. So it's one job every 40 years with a symphony orchestra like the Toronto Symphony. And every major orchestra in the world, it's usually one position every 40 years. So it's really, really hard to get a salaried job with a symphony orchestra. And yet there are so many great, great players that the Conservatory or the University of Toronto or the other music schools here are pumping out every year, and there are no jobs for them. So you got to do your own thing, and that's something that's great that you're teaching them there at the Toronto Film School about how to set up your own business and how to just create your own films and do your own writing and things like that. Because, with AI and all that kind of stuff, it's great when you think about how much AI is changing the whole industry. And that's the next section I wanted to talk about with the whole AI discussion. So we're going to zoom out. And what's your take on the film industry? Where is it going, especially with AI changing the game?
Yeah, AI is it's the future, and I know there's a lot of people. I myself am still a little bit hesitant, but I know that we need to embrace these tools and use them to our advantage. It is it's a tricky situation, especially being an actor. There's a lot of things that the union is fighting for and in negotiations for in order to make sure we're safe, our image and likeness is safe, and that studio execs don't just get to replica us playing a role in a film that we didn't sign up to necessarily.
Yeah.
It's a little scary as an actor. As a filmmaker, I feel like there's so many new tools out there to help me make my films, maybe on a better budget than it would be if I were to pay some professionals to do that. Now, it's like, okay, so there is probably going to be some job replacement in some cases, which is unfortunate. But for indie filmmakers, when movies cost so much to make, you have to squeeze every penny you can. So if you need to use AI, then that's what you do in order to make your film. If you don't have the $1,000 to pay someone to
Well,
do
and you describe yourself as an indie filmmaker, meaning someone who has got a very, very, very small budget compared to the multi-million-dollar budget of these blockbusters from any of the Marvel films or whatever, or any of the cartoons. Where nowadays, when you watch a cartoon and you're watching the credits, there are I'd say 2,000 or 3,000 people working on the film in just animating it. And that costs a lot of money. But with AI, there's an awful lot of animation happening as well.
Right. And I feel like, we're not going to get rid of AI. And I feel like it's going to be its own subgenre of film, right? So there will be AI films, right? But then there will be films made by real people or real animators.
Yeah.
And it'll just become its own genre of filmmaking, right? Your own category for Netflix, whatever that may be.
Yeah, it's quite something, with licensing headaches and, how this all works with you actually in the credits say this section was made with AI, this section wasn't, that. But also, if you're looking at a film like this most recent Indiana Jones film, where the beginning of the film, you're seeing a Harrison Ford in his 30s, and then all of a sudden, after 15 or 20 minutes, then you see him in a New York apartment in his 60s. And I couldn't believe, I'm sure that was done with AI to make him look like he was a young Harrison Ford, right?
Yeah.
And that sort of stuff is scary. That's just like all of this fake fake videos you see on social media. I nearly fell for one. I thought it was Mark Carney actually talking about some sort of investment project. And I clicked on it and watched it and I thought, oh, that's cool. But it wasn't even him. It was AI created scam, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the scary stuff about AI. Is it real or not real? And how can you use it? I mean, I've embraced ChatGPT for sure with helping me with writing and scripting and things like that as well.
Yeah, it's a very dangerous it has the potential for good and it has the potential for bad, right? And I
Yeah.
think these days we, the consumers of media and everything, we need to know that and then make our decisions accordingly, right? We can't believe everything we see online or in a video, wherever that may be. We need to do our own research.
Yeah. And I guess for you, if you're marking your students' papers or marking your students' story, and like, can you actually tell if they wrote it or was it created with ChatGPT?
Sometimes you can tell it's written by ChatGPT, but
Yeah.
and I'm not opposed to that. I use ChatGPT as well, like bounce ideas back and forth, or obviously check my grammar sometimes. But you make it your own. I consider it just like as plagiarism. I don't plagiarize what ChatGPT comes out with. I take those ideas and then I morph them into my text, whatever that may
Yeah.
be.
Yeah,
Kind of,
it's
right?
quite it's an incredible helpful tool. I wanted to move on to your own personal growth and in your family and so the Forgiveness in F minor was such a very moving film. And how has your relationship with your family evolved?
Since coming out, my relationship with my family has just gotten so much better. They see that, I am living the life that I was meant to live and that I'm happy, number one, right? I think their concerns when I first came out as queer, because they were baby boomers, right? So they grew up in the 60s and 70s
Like
um
me?
and yeah, and the lived through hearing about the AIDS epidemic and everything like that. So they
Yeah,
were be afraid for my life at the beginning,
right.
right? And then just giving them some education about the situation and how it's not the same anymore. Um, really made them feel better, and then also just seeing me be happy, be truly happy, and
Yeah.
that changed everything.
And
And
your father passed away?
yeah, my father passed away in 2015, suddenly, but we did have a good relationship up until the day he passed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have siblings and sibling support as well, or do they live close?
Yeah, my brother is about an hour away, and then my sister is in my hometown, a couple hours away, and so
Yeah.
we see each other quite a few times a year.
And you're
Um,
gonna see them this weekend for Easter?
Not this weekend, no. Unfortunately, I have to work this weekend.
Okay.
But my brother's birthday is next weekend, so we're all getting together for a big
And
dinner.
what is work? What you're filming something?
Yes, yeah, I have a
What are
film.
you working on right now?
Well, right now I'm coaching actors and I'm doing workshops with them every other weekends kind of thing. So we're shooting some scenes together and doing some scene study with that. And I have a couple other films down in the pipeline right now. I just moved into post-production for another comedy called No Match. It's about online dating. And then I'm kind of in development for a couple things for script writing.
Yeah. And so do you actually have an agent who says, "Hey, I came across this script. I think this is something for you to act in," or do you do it all yourself?
No, I do. I am represented. I do have an agent who
Yeah.
sent he looks for work for me, right? And so she's on my team. She knows what I like to do. She knows my casting hits. So once in a while, I'll get these auditions from her. But again, like I don't wait for the work to come to me, so I'm always working on
Right.
something, right? And I feel
Yeah,
like
that's good.
you need to do that in this industry or just in life in general. Like nothing's going to be handed to you.
Nope.
Go out and do it, right? If you love it and you want to do it, go do it. Find a way to do it, and you'll be so happy, and you'll learn something about yourself, and then you'll be able to rise to the next level in your career, whatever you want to do.
Yeah. So making a full circle and coming back to the actual addiction part about being addicted to all of these drugs and whatnot, and having the strength to fight this addiction. And once an addict, you're always an addict. You're never cured of your addiction, just like I'm never cured of my food addiction. But for anybody listening today and they're having issues with addiction, a drug addiction, for example, what would be some tips and some helpful tips that you can suggest for them?
I would say reach out and talk to somebody
Yeah.
about it. That's the first step. The first step is knowing you have a problem and then finding that one person that you trust wholeheartedly that you can talk to. A sober person, not somebody you're using with.
Somebody, not somebody you're using with, a sober person, somebody
A
that
sober
is
person who
in
has like,
sobriety or or because that's it's I would suppose it's really really hard because speaking from my own experience, it's something that you would do in secret. It's something that you would do late at night. For me, late at night when I'm alone in my room, the binge eating is something that I did in secret and nobody knew. People knew because I was ballooning in size, but for somebody who is addicted to drugs or coke or whatever, sometimes you can't tell. They're just like, oh, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Let's go. Let's just do our thing, and they don't share it with anybody, or they can't seem to get out of this constant circle of every day it's the same. I try to start the day with today is a day I'm not going to take any drugs, or today's a day I'm not going to eat any crap. And by the time the evening comes, you're going to be going out with friends, or you're doing something that reminds you about, I need my hit.
mhm.
How do you get out of this? Is that through the people that you reach out to, the specialists and drug addiction specialists? And
Well, I think it takes knowing, like finding out the reason why you use in the first place. Why are you taking these drugs? What are you going to replace it with? What are you masking with using, right? And then trying to deal with that issue, whatever it may be, right? In some cases, it's maybe the environment you're in. Okay, get yourself out of that environment, right?
yeah,
Okay, to start afresh, no matter what age you are, it does not matter. And to have sometimes it's good to go where nobody knows you, where you don't know anybody, and you can just start with a clean slate, and be able to build up bit by bit, day by day. And really, it is one foot in front of the other, day by day, because
yeah,
said once an addict, always an addict. I consider myself the same way. There are days where I get triggered, and
yep,
I can remember I can get shot right back into the mind state I was when I was an addict at some points, right? But
yep.
now I have the tools to realize what I'm thinking and know that no, that's not the best decision. This is the best decision, right? Sometimes you realize it's easier to face your problems head on than it is to put a band-aid over them, do drugs, do alcohol, whatever it is that you struggle with.
Yeah, and it's such a cliche to say it's a Hollywood problem too, because it's just people are always on the go, and people are always excited, and people are, oh, is this person on cocaine, or is this it's this it just seems to be like it's just something that is associated with being a movie star or being a rock star. We all know the story about Queen. We all know this about Freddie Mercury. We all know the story about Elton John. Elton John is, you know, a fantastic, amazing artist and musician, but just got into the wrong thing and started doing the wrong thing. And luckily he got out of it. But it's for so many, they don't. Like
Yeah.
this tragic death of one of the guy who fell off the hotel that was part of some group. I can't remember his name, last year or the year before. And it's just over and over and over again that you see that there's a lot of people struggling with alcohol and drugs. And I mean,
Yeah, even our beloved Chandler from Friends, right? Matthew.
right,
Um, things. But you know what? For every one of those celebrities that you mentioned, there's probably 1,000 regular people that are going through the exact same thing, who
yep,
don't have the exposure, that nobody knows about, that are afraid to even take the step to get clean, right?
right,
And don't have the money to help them get clean as well.
yeah,
It's so troubling. When I was trying to get into a drug rehabilitation program, there was such a wait list that it was like, if I have to wait 8 months to do this, I know I'm going to relapse and it's just going to get worse for the next 8 months until I
okay,
can get into something, right? So, you know, like if there was just more resources out there for people,
yeah,
more funding out there for people, and, you know, like it's such a taboo subject with like where you spend the government's money and on what, right? But like mental health is a real thing.
yeah,
And you know, like even if it doesn't, your own mental health doesn't trigger you to do drugs, it it still triggers you to do something that you're not that you maybe don't want to do, right?
yeah. And it becomes something like sorry, I just have to readjust myself here. It doesn't help when there's a show on Apple, and I finally remembered the name of the actor, Seth Rogen. So Seth Rogen, he wrote a wonderful book. It was hilarious, yearbook, all about his whole drug story in Vancouver, and I recently listened to him on a podcast, and he's always joking about how high he is all the time, and he makes it sound like, oh yeah, well it's okay, it's quite okay to do this, but it's not, in the sense that if you don't have control over yourself and you get to the point where you're going to be doing illegal things, which happen to you with drug dealing and things like that, or you actually die, it's not okay, and that I, I, I think it's, especially since the pandemic, I've noticed here in the village that people are really struggling with drug and alcohol abuse, that they just don't know what to do, so they're just going to drink or they're just going to take drugs to escape life, reality, or everything seems fine when you're behind a cloud of whatever. Kind of like me with my binge eating. Like if I'm feeling good, I eat. If I'm feeling bad, I eat. So it's a trigger, right?
Yeah, no. And I mean, I still have my days where I don't want to get out of bed. And sometimes I just allow myself to have those days.
Yeah.
Sit here, eat a tub of ice cream, feel sorry for myself, but then the next day wake up with a fresh face and then force myself to do something, right? Like we have to let ourselves process whatever it may be. We have to allow ourselves some grace in those moments. But then we just need to recognize in those moments that, okay, we're allowed to feel this way, but okay, what are the right steps that I need to take to not feel this way?
Yeah. And speaking of steps, because you have like with AA, the 10-step program and all that kind of thing where when you're trying to practice sobriety. But is there somebody that you reach out to when you say something like really, really awful or stressful happens to you and you're on the brink of going back to your old habits? Is there somebody that you reach out to?
Yeah, there's probably like three friends that I call all the time when I'm troubled and when I'm having bad thoughts or something, right?
Yeah.
So And
It's
so,
important. It's an important message for anybody. You cannot do it alone. It takes a village.
no, it
You
does.
you can't keep it inside. I have this podcast because my broadcasting of my issues to the world, to anybody who's listening to me, that's the way that I am able to stay on track, because you're never ever not going to be an addict. It's always there. But the path that you take to keep you from going back to those old bad habits is really very, very important.
Very, and having that thing to wake up in the morning and to do, right? And to feel accountable for, and to feel like you're making a little bit of a difference, whether it's in your life or somebody else's life, right?
Yeah.
In that
It's
purpose.
it's really true. And so your journey is a reminder that we can turn even our darkest chapters into something meaningful and creative, right?
Yeah.
So before we wrap up today, Chad, I think this has been so fantastic. I know it's kind of a dark topic, but not really, because in the end, you've created some amazing things and some amazing films, and you continue doing that. So where can people find your work?
You can check out my website, tailoredfilms.ca. Also on IMDb. My social is Chad Tailor on Instagram, and tailoredfilms.corp on Instagram as well for my company page.
And on YouTube, because I recently learned actually that the second biggest search engine in the world is YouTube. The largest search engine is Google, and the second largest is YouTube. So I'm glad that my Finding Wendy is on YouTube, because when it comes to finding things and finding people and finding you, Chad, they can find you on YouTube as well, right?
Yes, also Chad Tailor on YouTube as well.
Yeah, yeah. And so what are your upcoming projects?
So my upcoming projects, I have a couple scripts that I've written, which are more LGBTQ centered, that I would like to act in and produce and direct. Kind of surrounding an introverted gay man in his late 30s trying to find connection in this world that is so fast-paced and on the dating apps, and it's like fast sex, what's next kind of mentality.
Yeah.
But this guy trying to connect with people and getting all these mixed connections with them.
Oh, who knows? Maybe we can do a film together. You can do my story.
Yeah.
It's
If
just,
I had a nickel for every time somebody said that to me.
I'm sure.
But
I'm sure
I love
you
their
have.
story.
Yeah,
But
because
no, I feel like everybody should tell their story, whether
yeah,
it's through a podcast, whether it's through a book, whether it's just through talking to other people, right? Or making a movie or whatever you need to do.
I'm
Get out,
trying to
tell
make
your
this
story.
more of a chat show. And are you planning to write a book one day, by the way?
No, it's not in my it's not
To-do
on my
list.
list of things to do. No, but
No?
I'm not going to say no, because I never say no to anything. You never know what might happen later down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's been great talking to you. And I think, of course, we're going to be meeting up soon to have a coffee and talk about this. But it's just, I am so blessed to be surrounded in such creative people here in downtown Toronto. I live in, we live in the gay village here, and there's so many creative people around. And thank God we do have these mediums like podcasts and YouTube, and just create your own stuff. Basically, if you want to get your story out, just create a podcast, which is what I did. So,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
it's when it comes to addiction and also the MAID program, that's a whole different subject altogether. But with addiction, that you have food addiction, you have drug addiction, you have alcohol addiction, and who knows, maybe some other addictions too, like sex addiction or video addiction, video game addiction.
Yeah. You can be addicted to anything, and
Really? Actually, yes, I'm secretly, I'll just say it, I'm addicted to television. watching TV.
I know.
I'm not addicted to the news anymore, but at least it's great. Well, if this episode touched you, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us, joining Chad and me today here in Toronto. You can find more of my podcasts on my website at the findingwendypod.com, where you can leave a review and share with someone that you think maybe needs a dose of hope today. And you're not alone. You're just not alone. And if you've got a story to tell, reach out to me. And thank you so much, Chad, for coming today. And until next time, we're going to keep creating, keep dreaming, and finding the right path together, and finding and staying on our path of healthiness. So everybody, thanks so much, everybody, today. And thank you so much for coming, Chad. And we'll talk to you next time.
Yes, thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.